Anthony Yeager.
Andrew.
Geddes. Yeah, that's my last name.
I know your last name. One time when we first started working together, I think I didn't say it to you. I said your last name is like lettuce, like Geddes, you know?
Oh yeah.
And Chris Moore just started laughing at me, and I was like, "It's my second day. Sorry."
What's funny is it is pronounced Geddes. Up like if you look throughout like my family's history's name, but my grandpa didn't like Geddes the way it sounded. Well, it sounds like get us. I don't know. There's a story behind it. I don't really know what it is. So I guess the pronunciation of it's changed throughout the years more to Geddes. Sounds a little bit more. Who knows? Something. Sounds something.
I understand.
Yeah. Geddes sounds fancy though. Geddes sounds like I'm a part of the elite. Whether I am or not, it makes me feel like I am. You know, that's really my only aspiration in life.
All right. Good luck with that. Hey, I got a great beer of the week. This worked out perfectly.
Let's go then.
So in honor of your mountain trip,
okay.
I don't know if you went to Sierra Nevada, the brewery. It's in Asheville.
I did not, but I have been. It's a pretty cool area.
So I'm drinking a Sierra Nevada hazy little thing. So the IPA is pretty good. So that's the beer of the week.
Okay. That's a pretty good one. That worked with my trip. Did you plan that?
I had it. Well, I had it.
This is a lazy beer of the week. You just happen to have it in the fridge.
I happen to have it, but then you told me that you were in the mountains, and I was like, this will work.
Interesting. Okay. Well, we'll go with it. So, very good one. I have my beer of the week, because I'm on a different podcast than you, is Mountain Candy, because I went to the mountains this week, and I almost became bear candy. So, Mountain Candy.
Oh, haha. Hey, we're on the same page, actually. Local IPAs.
Yeah. Mountain Candy's better. Yep. Sierra Nevada.
Mountain Candy is the best beer, I think, in Charlotte.
Dude, it's actually really good. It's expensive as hell, though. If you go to a local grocery store, like 4 of these cans, which are, 16-ounce cans. Yeah, 16-ounce cans was $14.
It is. I got it on sale. Harris Teeter had it for $10.99. So I got 2 of them, which is still only 8 beers.
I appreciate it.
I should have texted our colleague Lee Byers.
Lee Byers. Who's that? We haven't talked about him before.
Yeah. Hey, listen to this. So we might be doing a little special episode this week with a couple people that we know that are cops to kind of talk about everything that's going on.
Yeah.
But I don't want to shout at them. I've anointed a South Carolina correspondent.
Okay.
Named Bo Dorton, who was jealous that we were going to have one of those cops on the podcast, and he wasn't. So I said, listen, if anything nationally relevant ever happens with South Carolina, incredibly unlikely, you can be on the podcast.
I forget Bo Dorton. Bo is from he was in where did he grow up in? Charleston?
No. Yeah, I think Charleston, and he went to South Carolina.
Oh, good for him. So if we ever need to just talk about South Carolina for a whole episode, we'll ask Bo Dorton.
I also have something to tell you offline about a transaction I tried to do for one of his friends.
Oh, okay. So you're gonna just keep our listeners in the unknown mystery of whatever it is.
It's a mystery.
Okay. Cool. Well, till next week when I reveal all the secrets.
No. Confidentiality.
Yeah.
Hey, nothing really happened this week. I don't know what we're gonna talk about.
Nah, man, not at all. No, the world's not burning down before our eyes. Not at all.
I know. Have you seen the quote? And it's like racism isn't getting worse; it's getting filmed.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
Yeah.
I don't know who said that though, but I think that's a very good summary.
I think it's true no matter who said it. I see it and it's like it has the quote and then it says by Will Smith, and I'm like, I don't think Will Smith said that.
Damn, we need to fact check.
I think they're just like I tried to.
You don't think Will Smith is smart enough?
Well, I tried to look it up and I couldn't see anything about him saying that.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's one of those quotes that people don't know who to attribute to, so they attribute it to a celebrity to make it hit.
It seems like something he would say. It doesn't. I mean, it's so relevant.
I wonder who said it now. I'm kind of curious. I'm trying to look around. Will Smith.
We'll get our intern on that.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll have to figure out who said that, but whoever it is, it's a very, very, to me personally, a very good summary of what's happening. which is,
I agree.
we'll get into it more. Actually, we'll postpone that to a little bit halfway through the podcast, but there is a lot more to that, implications around that I think a lot of just white America doesn't really know how to grapple with. So many of these instances, the general response from the like white, and I don't even know, there's probably a better word than to say white America. That's a little too generic, but I don't know a better word, so that's what I use, because the country is 75% white, so there is kind of cultural connotations that comes alongside that, whether we like it or not. And so many people that I know who are white and do come from what I would say that culturally white mindset, they look at everything so isolated and individualistic and don't take like a broader approach and a big picture approach. So they're constantly going, oh, well, the killing of George Floyd it didn't have anything to do with race. It was just an individual act of police brutality, and we're just going to leave it there. I mean, that's a very strong feeling from a lot of the conservative friends I have. Ben Shapiro's is someone who perpetuates that. And other people, and some people are asking it in goodwill, but some people are saying it because they've never taken the time, and we'll get into this more later. I'm probably talking too much about this, but they've never taken the time to step back to look at the amount of instances where stuff happens, to see the pattern of it, to say, well, maybe this isn't an isolated event. Maybe there is a pattern here. And what is the most common denominator between all of these factors, and work from there. So anyway, that's bad.
Yeah, I think just this week has been crazy, and I think it's like we're just constantly repeating ourselves with protests and cycles, and nothing. Things maybe get incrementally better, but obviously not better enough. At least they charged, the officer with murder. But what if that happened in like a southern state, like Minnesota, pretty moderate, kind of leaning left? What if that happened in like Alabama, or Georgia?
Yeah,
it did happen in Georgia.
See, that's the thing though. That's weird about this. Still. And yeah. All right, we'll go into this more later, but that's the weirdest thing is like you wonder if, regardless of where it happens in the country, I'm of the belief that if it's not videotaped most of the time, this is all the proof you need, in my opinion. And even then, like this is where I stand about it. Is it's like these guys were fired within 24 hours because the police department knew it was wrong. Well, what did the police department think would happen that was wrong? What did they actually think that was happening? It was a tragedy of excessive force, but it wasn't that big. It wasn't murder. It was just excessive force. So they're going to get fired for not doing their job. The police department obviously knew these guys had done something wrong, but they weren't going to charge them until the PR pressure came into the picture and the video started getting released. And it was like, oh, shit, now we do need to kind of charge this guy and actually save our butts. But even then, man, it's like, how many officers involved in these types of scenarios can you list who were actually charged with murder and found guilty? I can think of like 2 off the top of my head out of all the examples, so even being charged for murder doesn't mean jack squat if they're not found guilty. So
yeah, let's talk about Jimmy Carter because I want to make sure we have time for that.
First of all,
we can talk about
tweet of the week. So you go first.
I broke the rule 2 weeks in a row. So when we originally started this, we weren't supposed to have any Trump tweets because it was too easy. But then last week he was retweeting himself from tweets like from the previous day.
Totally
like,
okay.
Stupid.
Yeah.
And now this week he's flat out in an argument with Twitter, and I thought this was also too low hanging fruits.
Yeah.
So Twitter started slapping some tags on his tweets. He was talking
very
about
mild tags. Very mild.
And like obviously, probably more so to incite him, or maybe they were trying to look like they're taking a stand. I don't think they're going to kick him off Twitter, but
no, they can't. They can't.
He was tweeting about fraudulent the mail, right? Because there may be mail-in voting in
ballots,
November.
Yep.
And he was saying it's going to lead to fraud, and they said this tweet is misleading. And then he was like, he's going to put an executive order out to curtail social media companies.
What?
And then he said, shoot the looters, shoot the protesters. And then Twitter said that encourages violence.
Yeah, a little bit. It does encourage it, just a tad. When the looting starts, the shooting starts. Quoting a racist down in Florida about shooting looters. That's great. That might incite some violence.
Meanwhile, there's still a pandemic, which I think everyone's forgotten about. Also, have you seen the crowds gathering to protest?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
There's
I think the coronavirus, I think it's about to just be like, you know what, let the cards fall where they may type of situation, because people are getting a little, with the riots and stuff that are happening now, that becomes much more of a, I don't know, people are much more interested in engaging over that and getting that fixed than they are dealing with the coronavirus, it looks like right now, which I can't really. Yeah, totally
But
understand.
it's like, if we're rioting, I mean, can you have a football game or a concert? Like, what's the
I know. I
difference?
know. It's like, can you riot in a socially distancing type of way?
No,
I don't think that's a thing.
I don't. I think with the coronavirus, I think there'll be a second wave. Maybe we're already experiencing it. I don't think people are going to shut down again. I just
No,
don't think it's going
I
to
don't
happen.
even think we could afford it. I honestly don't think we could.
Yeah,
So, in a sense, it's like, look, man, it sucks, but it is a disease. It's not like it's a weapon from a foreign country or a weapon designed by someone. It's a disease. It's going to do what it does, and we have to react as smart as we can. But I mean, at the end of the day, you can't shut down everything permanently. So,
so I have my first haircut tomorrow, my like
ooh,
professional haircut appointment with my
there we
barber in
go.
like 3 months,
There we
and
go,
I don't know if I need to wear a mask or not because
dude.
I want to
Yeah.
be like considerate, but like logistically, it's like around the back of your head and like your head, like what if
Yeah,
like
I don't
really
even know, man.
upset?
I don't even know. I feel like a biggest jackass every time I go out and don't wear a mask because I forget to do it all the time when I
Hmm.
go out. It's just not in my habit to do it. So I'll go to the store, go get gas station, whatever it is, and just forget about it. But
Yeah.
you're talking about with a dentist, that's different because it's inevitable that you're going to be touching each other. So it's like, what is a mask going
Right.
to do?
Yeah. What's the difference? I don't like, obviously, I don't want to get it. I feel like, but in the sense,
Yeah.
like, wouldn't you rather kind of get it and then you have it and then you're done?
Yeah, you're just over
So,
with it. No, I mean, honestly, I don't know. At this point, who knows? It's probably better to just get it over with and move on.
yeah, it feels like things are starting to go back to normal because the police killed a black guy, so things are
Yeah.
back to normal,
Yeah,
right?
things are returning back to what they were before. I know, it's crazy, man. This is by far, I'll do my tweet of the week in just a second, but this is by far the worst example that I have seen of police brutality that is just like,
Yeah.
to me, it's just so cut and dry bad that the whole country should be united around this. But, lo and behold, that's not going to happen because, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. So,
Right, but
uh,
exactly. But to circle back, I mean, all this stuff. There's still a pandemic. There's obviously racial unrest, a lot going on with that. I think I've seen more. I think the video is just so cut and dry that it's
yeah,
really causing more of an uprising, and even people who are a little more conservative to react, at least if not to the protesting, to the video. And
yeah,
meanwhile, the
yeah.
president of the United States is fighting with a social media company.
Yeah. Woohoo! Dude, I swear to God, I had so many people on my Facebook post tweet how they were like, "Oh, thank you, Mr. President, for standing up against Facebook for free
Yeah,
speech." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, first of all, he stood up to Twitter, not Facebook. Second of all they didn't silence his voice. All they literally said was, "Hey, this might be misleading. Go to these sources and decide for yourself." And that's somehow silencing free speech. Like, conservatives are some of the most victim hungry people I ever meet, and victim like mentality of every little thing that happens, like they must be out to get us. Let's fight back. And it's like, dude, all Twitter did is use the private company that they have built to say, hey,
private.
that's a misleading statement. And now conservatives are like, hey, let's use the government to shut down a private company because they were a little mean to our president. Like, my
That's the
God, man.
thing. Yeah, but it's an interesting discussion about the role of social media companies and
Yeah.
free speech and all that. But I fall with this. They're a private for-profit company, so ultimately they can decide what they want to do and what they want on their platform, right? I mean, isn't
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to agree with that, although I do think so. I think on one hand, there's dumb ways to run their platform and smart ways, so you can criticize what you think is dumb and what is smart. And two, honestly, there's a lot of power behind Twitter and Facebook. It's almost like the public square, like in the olden days, and it has a lot of power. So I'm okay with certain government regulation around them. To be honest with you, I think there should be, but I don't want Trump making that government regulation because all he does is get butthurt and tries to change the rules so that he can keep his BS lying propaganda out there. So I don't want someone like Trump to make the rules for the government regulations for social media companies, but I am okay with smart regulation to be done for them so that there's not stifling of free speech and you do allow certain things to happen. Like I can kind of get those arguments.
yeah, it's tough because it's like I've heard the argument that it's a public utility and should be treated as such, and to an
Yeah, yeah.
extent, I think the way people get their information from it, but they still, I mean, I guess utility companies like they make money too. They can be for profit and still have regulation. So
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
we're gonna see that. Yeah, but you're right.
It's
Trump should not
complicated.
be the person
No,
doing
not at
this
all. God, no.
because he's
God, no.
mad. What's your
Yeah.
tweet?
All right, tweet of the week is and I feel bad using this guy again, but I mean He's just so good at having ridiculous tweets. Charlie Kirk.
Yes.
He put out one today. I mean, so get this. We have clearly an instance of police brutality of an officer murdering a black man, defiantly looking at the cameras, basically getting off on the whole situation. One of the most disgusting videos you will ever see, and from a police brutality perspective. I mean, all this rioting is happening. People are protesting this. I mean, the African American community is hurting over all this. They're like trying to grapple with how to proceed forward. And then Charlie Kirk tweets out, let's get this tweet. Come on, baby. Where'd you go? Oh, yeah. Well, actually, there's two. there's the future. The future of America depends on Trump being reelected. Nothing is more important than making sure America gets 4 more years of Donald Trump. I thought that was pretty funny. But the one that correlates to what I was saying was, I guess I can't find it, but he basically said white privilege is here we go. White privilege is a racist lie. The statistics, data, and something don't support the conclusion of white privilege or something is what he says essentially. But he calls it white privilege is a racist lie. And I'm just like, dude, this guy, like, every time I think he can't get worse, he gets so much worse. Like, it's bad, man.
I've seen that video of him with the white privilege is a racist lie, like on YouTube, Facebook, whatever.
I have not seen it.
And I get, he's basically saying, which I get it. He's basically saying like poor white people don't have privilege, which like.
See, but that's not what white privilege is. That's not. God
he's
dang.
Saying like, look at you, you're still behind, blah 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 blah, while the Democrats and the minorities are up, et cetera, et cetera. And like, I get how if you're not informed about it and you're sitting in that position, how you can come up with that belief. But Charlie Kirk, is probably the definition of white privilege. I'm not sure how he's our age. I mean, he's in his mid-20s.
Yeah.
And he followed the Trump campaign around in 2016. I feel like that just doesn't magically happen. But yeah, that's not what white privilege is. But I see again how you could.
So I can mischaracterize. I can literally mischaracterize. So first of all, there's always a position where it's like in its original state and defined as good as it can, it makes sense. And then there are spinoffs of that position that don't make sense, and that maybe those get more popular because humans aren't always the most logical. So I'm sure there's versions of a conception of white privilege that is stupid. I've heard a couple. I'm fine with that. So he can criticize them. But white privilege in a very basic sense, with the best arguments being presented around it, are undeniable. They're very, very clearly prevalent in the society we live in. It doesn't mean every white person is somehow privileged to the point of they're able to get, certain discounts that African or that other people, non-white people can, or they get certain, benefits in all areas of life, or they're automatically going to make more money. It doesn't guarantee like concrete material results, but white privilege in its basic form, and from my perception anyway, is more of a cultural thing. And if you culturally, like, I guess you put it this, the most basic way I can put it to like your conservative is most white people marry white people. If you have a mom looking at a little white son, she can easily empathize with the white son, even if it's not her son, more because there's a relatability factor because maybe it looks like her son. There's all these social cues you can relate to if people look like you that you can't if you don't. And human nature is very, very tribal around similarities, whether it's, anything from skin color to, whatever you want to do. So there's very simple cases to be made around white privilege that everyone agrees upon. But he does such a bad straw man of what it means and then pretends to burn it down as if he's dealt with the argument. And it's just bad, man. I can't stand it.
Yeah. And isn't that what you described, the conservative movement?
Yeah. I believe that.
For every problem. Problem. It just, you get the same core of this argument as we cycle through. So right now it's, racial unrest, maybe things go back to normal. Right. And then Trump does something else, or Democrat, it's all these things.
Yeah.
That it's just layered in, I guess, cognitive dissonance or hypocrisy. And
I don't know, man. Some of it I think is just conservatives are better at playing the political game. They just understand that it's not about morals. It's about kind of like, personally to me, I think most of them understand that in order to, you got to play hardball all the time, which means you got to get people worked up. You got to get people angry. You got to get people kind of concerned. You got to stoke the fear. You got to really, there's certain things they've just figured out are successful. And it's less about being accurate and consistent with any position or philosophy. It's much more about the effect that you need to have in order to win the game, essentially. And I think they're just a lot better at that than Democrats are.
And you know what else? Do you know how easy it has to be a Trump supporter?
Oh.
Like you just point your finger at everyone, and it's like you don't have to worry about anything.
Nah, it's everyone else's problem, not yours.
Nope,
it
was Obama.
The amount of it was Obama. Dude, I swear, I could rant for days about the just absolute, utter, and clear hypocrisy from the conservative base, the Christian conservative base, the evangelical conservative base, whatever you want to call them. And the amount of times where it's like, they are just willing to criticize Democrats because they're Democrats. And if the Republican does the exact same thing, it doesn't matter because at least he's advancing our agenda as well. And so there's no consistency in principles. There's always shift the blame. Honestly, they are better at the political game from the party to the base of the party than the Democrats are. Every time I look, I'm just like, man, the Republicans have this down way more to a pat than the Democrats do.
They rigged the system where they can get less votes and still win.
Yeah,
like,
dude.
Come on, that's genius.
Yeah,
and you know what? And this is a good segue because the founder of this modern movement was Ronald Reagan, the winner of the 1980 presidential election, defeating incumbent Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, absolutely. Who is our fourth president out of a series of 5 presidents who's an incumbent who lost re-election.
Yes.
It's pretty interesting reading. I don't know what you thought. I'm interested to hear your thoughts about it. But I actually, in some ways, found a ton of similarities between like the 1976 election to the current election that just happened and the incumbency of Jimmy Carter with how he had a lot of tragedies hit his last year, and that's what affected his reelection and how that's kind of happening with Trump. I did see a lot of similarities in some ways, but in other senses, it was kind of, I don't know. Jimmy Carter was a weird president. He's a weird individual in general. He didn't really, everything I watched him do, I was like, I don't know why the amount of people backed him that did back him. He doesn't draw your confidence out. He just kind of like soft, mildly spoken, and kind of just there. It's weird.
He won his presidential election on like the outsider movement, kind of shocked everyone. And I think just because you're good at campaigning doesn't mean you're good at governing. And I think that's what he ran into. There were probably things that happened, that weren't in his control, like the Iranian hostage crisis, which he kind of botched. But Reagan didn't have any policy other than that's wrong, lower taxes, and went to a landslide.
Well, that works better. People can track with that better. I mean, honestly, Reagan was a more polished Donald Trump in a lot of ways. I mean, there is a lot of similarities there, how they just oversimplified things. But the problem was Reagan was way more elegant, and that's why he just would win in landslides. There wasn't a lot to criticize Reagan for on face value. So
right, and it's, I mean, I think when Reagan won in 1980, it was the first time in 28 years the Republicans controlled the Senate. And you kind of see this, like, I really think that's kind of the birth, if not the birth, like the coming out party of the modern Republican Party.
Yeah.
Because like you're on the scene. Yeah. You got this leader who's saying all these things like that maybe you were afraid to say or weren't popular. Now he's got political control, and they did implement policies, you know what I mean? And really change things. And, the idea of just limited government, I still don't know what that means.
Limited when I want it to be limited. Basically, it's limited when the Democrats are in charge.
Right. That's precisely accurate.
It is fascinating. I need to study Reagan's presidency at some point because it seems to have had very big implications for modern day stuff. With Jimmy Carter, though,
he's their godfather.
He is, soon to be replaced by Donald Trump if he wins re-election. Which interesting. We'll have to. I don't know, man. I have a couple points I'll bring to your attention. I'm curious to get your thoughts on. But yeah, Jimmy Carter. So the part that I thought was interesting is there was also in his 1976 election, and I realize I'm talking about the one before the one we're supposed to be talking about, but
Mr. Ford.
There was when he ran against Ford and won. There were 17 Democrats who ran, which was very similar to this time. And Jimmy Carter won by playing that kind of moderate Democrat card where he would appeal to kind of the conservative. I mean, he was literally called a Republican Democrat, basically, by a lot of people. And that's basically what Joe Biden is this time. There's a lot of similarities to how what Joe Biden's appeal was with Jimmy Carter. There's a lot of overlap between those two. So I thought that was definitely interesting to see kind of the Democratic Party's field in 1976. But what I thought was even more interesting is in 1980, I didn't know this, and I don't know if you came across this, but Ted Kennedy actually challenged Jimmy Carter. Did you read about that?
I did, and he almost won.
Yeah.
The primary. Yeah.
I think, let me actually make sure I don't get this wrong just a second. Primary. But it was interesting because Ted Kennedy was much more of a Bernie Sanders-esque type of individual who's more, populist and progressive and like talking about a lot more issues. And Jimmy Carter was much more of he talked about cutting the budget and lower and shrinking government size. And he just was not that type of individual. So it was interesting to see the civil war within the Democratic Party back then, as much as, the Bernie wing versus the Biden wing has been this time, as there's a lot of overlaps there too.
Yeah, I think, and once again, unfortunately, you see the left wing of the Democratic Party, the Bernie wing, lose.
Yeah.
I think they just that's a hard battle to win, even if Jimmy Carter's unpopular. To primary out in your party the incumbent president, I just don't think that's ever been a recipe for success.
Yeah, I agree. It's never happened, right? I'm trying to think. I don't think it's ever happened.
I don't think so. Not where an incumbent got primaried and lost their party's nomination.
Yeah, that's never happened. God, that'd be fascinating to see happen, though. So I'm looking at the results here, and Ted Kennedy got 7.3 million, and Jimmy Carter got 10. So, it's a $2.7 million, $2.7 million vote difference. So, Jimmy Carter did win, but that's not by much when you're talking about being an incumbent president. That shows you how unliked Jimmy Carter was by his own party in some ways,
Yeah, but it's tough because as a party, at least the Democratic Party, we seem to do this, just accept these sunk costs and then ride them all the way to defeat.
Yeah, exactly.
Over and over again. Maybe we're witnessing now, maybe not.
Dude, if Joe Biden wins, do you think someone would primary him, or do you think he will even run for a second term? I don't even know if he'd run for a second term.
He would.
I agree. I totally agree. Which I think is why the VP pick is stepping down.
Yeah.
Go Joe Biden. Maybe I should vote for him with the thought that he'll step down in 4 years.
If it's Warren, I really think I'd be surprised.
That's the way it's going. I agree.
But it's easy to say that when you're not president and you get it. Obviously he was vice president, but it's still different when you have that taste for 4 years. Although I will say this, I don't think he's someone that's so vain enough, if that makes sense. It's not like Trump.
Yeah.
That if it wasn't clear that he couldn't do it or something, he wouldn't step down. But I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think.
Yeah. He'll be a lot older than
Warren.
I think it'll be Warren. But the Jimmy Carter presidency itself, I think, it tried to do certain things, like it created the Department of Energy, Department of Education. So I think he actually had very good aspirations. He was, honestly, I think he went into it with good intentions, but the governing part didn't go very well, and he hit several crises that American people did not like how he handled it, like the hostage situation in Iran. That was a big deal that ended up costing him a lot of re-election votes, So I don't know, man. I feel like, honestly, I actually liked some of the things he said. Like, I'd listened to a lot of his political ads and stuff, and I kind of related to a lot of things he said, but it seems to me that if you don't play the political game to kind of go for cutthroat and just and you can govern in a way that your base is happy, you don't really win very much, it seems like. It's kind of weird.
Right, exactly. But that's the thing is, you're in this position where you constantly have to decide between, do you want to get policy done that matters at a political cost, or do you want to win re-election?
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
The ultimate thing with politicians. Obviously, Obama was the last politician to do this well, and George Bush, although he lost the first.
Obama was really good at it. He was really good at kind of putting up one front, and then behind the scenes just kind of, playing a little bit more savvy, I guess you could say.
Right. But don't you have to?
I don't. I guess
or you could be like Trump.
Yeah. See, but that's the thing. Trump is like the embodiment of what people mildly did already. It's weird. I'm not going to say anyone's like Trump, because Trump governs in a very chaotic way and does things that no other president does. I get that. But there is something to be said by he's just very open, and with his dirty tactics, he's very open with things that people were doing behind the scenes a lot of times as well. And so it is kind of a weird. I don't know. He just plays to his base. I think that's Trump's biggest strength is he knows how to play and shape his base, and that's at the end of the day, that's all you have to do. That's really all you have to do.
And he can do it. I mean, based on the electoral math. So I don't think he's going to have people defect, at least not a significant enough percentage to matter. Maybe there's going to be people I think that voted for him in 2016 that probably just won't vote. Or something like that. But really, you just need more Democrats and independents to vote for Biden. There's no persuasion. I just don't think that's on the table at all. So then you're constantly in this battle because to win a primary, you want to go further left or further right in theory. Yeah. But you're winning at the margins. So you get these polarized candidates that run, and you only have two. Like, I don't think Biden is that extreme, but you get two choices that are just radically different from each other.
Yeah.
And then you win 51-49 or win 49-51 in Trump's case.
You get everything. Yeah.
Right. And you get everything, which is crazy. Like, because it's clearly not like this overwhelming command from the American population that we want this.
I know.
You won in these states. And then we get this policy and these platforms and this style of governing when most of us didn't want it.
It's weird to look at the way, like, if you look at the total population of the United States of voting age people, and then you go, okay, so I forget what percentage of it is, but let's just say hypothetically 60% of the country doesn't even vote. So then an election is being determined by 40% of the country. So that 40% of the country, let's say 21% of it wanted it to govern a certain way, and then 19% of it wanted a different way. That means that 19% that can potentially win and has won and did win is literally dictating the whole way the country is going to be governed with such a small minority. It's the weirdest. I mean, I'm not saying I know a better system, but that just seems backwards to me. Like, I don't
mandatory voting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Australia does. I feel like, obviously, if you took like a poll of the country, I'm sure more people disapprove of Trump than approve, but he's still the president.
Yeah.
You got mandatory voting, or I don't know, better term.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I've heard this
has to give something better to vote for. Maybe that's it.
So think of this. I'm interested to get your thoughts on this. Is like, what if you had what's called ranked choice voting? So like you got the country to vote on legalizing marijuana, and if enough of them vote for positive or whatever it is, then whatever party's in power doesn't matter. They have to implement whatever the American people voted for. That always has made more sense to me than just voting for a party and letting them do what the hell they want to do over their, time and power. If we actually had like issues we had to vote for, and then the American people came out and voted for, and then that party had to do what they could to implement what the people voted for, I'm sure it's not as cut and dry as I'm making it sound, but that would be a very interesting approach that would kind of cut through the two-party dynamic we have in a way and just actually start to get things done a little bit more effectively.
But like we can never pass a radical change because of how it's set up. Even say Bernie won, obviously probably the most radical candidate we had. Would he have really been able to pass healthcare even if he had Democratic majorities? Do you really that would have been really hard for him to do that?
Probably not. I mean, honestly, Bernie, the more I look at it, the more I realize Bernie was missing that cutthroat quality you almost need to get stuff done in politics. Like, even with, like, that's something Donald Trump has that's unfortunate, but he does, is he's willing to throw anyone in his party under the bus if they're not going to get on the agenda with him, and so you almost have to kind of have this approach where it can't be like Joe Biden, where it's constantly, let's compromise about the compromise about the compromise, and then we'll talk about getting things done, and then nothing gets done. You almost have to have someone who's like, no, I'm going to push full steam ahead this one direction, and whoever's not on board is going to get blacklisted, and you have to be more aggressive if you want that radical change. If you want incremental change, then you almost don't need. There's no way to measure an administration that wants incremental change. There's almost no way to measure that success. It's just kind of, they came and they governed like they said they would, and they left. But honestly, it's going to take years and years before we know if what they did was even effective. So I don't know. The more I learn about politics, the more I realize you do got to be a little bit more cutthroat. You got to play to win. You got to be a little bit more, if you're going to be in the system, you kind of got to be willing to not bend your morals, but at least compromise where it makes sense. But you also have to hold that reality with the reality of pushing towards very specific directions that will be better for people, or why are you there in the first place? So it's kind of a weird dynamic.
And on top of all that, you have to keep trying to win so you can hold that power to try to make those changes. So you're constantly running for re-election, especially in Congress. In the Senate,
Yep.
in the House, for sure. In the Senate, a little more leeway, but it's like it's hard to balance those things. And so you just kind of, I'm voting party lines, you know what I mean? And then you try to win,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
keep the power. But I don't think
Yeah.
Biden, there's no compromise because there's no incentive to compromise. Because it's like, why would I compromise with you now when in 3 years
Yeah.
I could just wait for you to get voted out?
Exactly. Yeah. No, it is weird, man. It is. It's a weird system. I mean, it's really cool in some
It's a
ways
bad
if you can.
system, though.
It's a terrible system at getting things done that need to get done in a way, but it's also not a terrible system compared to a lot of the ways other governments have been done throughout human history. But you would just think we would be able to do better at this point. You'd think we'd be able to switch the system to be more effective at this point, and it doesn't seem like we do. It almost seems like both parties like the gridlock essentially. It's weird, man.
The gridlock, but again, it's so easy. There's just nope. It's the Republicans. No, it's the Democrats. I'm still in power. I'm still,
Exactly.
in the Senate, in the House. I
Yeah.
think. I mean, obviously, we're like far from like the worst country in the world. I mean, it's what
Yeah.
I mean. But
Yeah.
these changes that I think for us doesn't even necessarily affect us. We have the kind of platform and privilege to just commentate on them while not standing on the sidelines, but not being directly affected.
Impacted. Yeah. Very true.
Yeah, which is nice, but in a way, it's like, why isn't everyone in that same position or given that same opportunity?
Yeah.
And so
very true.
It's just a system that does not incentivize progress. And then when you get
it really doesn't.
Right. When you get candidates that advocate for progress, like Bernie, they lose. Trump advocated progress in the wrong direction, and he won. And it's just like, man,
it is weird. It is weird.
It's demoralizing. That's why
it really is. Yeah, there's not a lot of good mojo or good feelings that come from being involved in politics, like that, that inspirational feeling you get of just doing good for humanity. Like that's kind of overrated in the sense of it doesn't happen very often, if ever, when you're in politics. Politics is more to me, and I haven't been involved with it like you have, but it seems to me like it's more just nonstop grueling and who can be the more creative attack dog essentially about the other campaign. Like there's just so many dynamics to it that just honestly, to your average good person, it's like I don't even want to have anything to do with that, so they just kind of turn their back on it, and I don't know, it's a mess, man.
I think for so many people there's just this, I don't want to call it an illusion, but there's stability in going to work. I know we've talked about this, going to work and you have a house, you can afford your mortgage payments, maybe buy a nice car, whatever, maybe you got some student loan, credit card debt. Is that a huge deal? You're comfortable. And for so many people in America, they're not comfortable, as we're seeing, but it's like it's not in these people's, it's not even in our like day-to-day vision. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's you want to advocate for that, and then you don't know how, and like you can vote, but I vote, and then it's a Democrat.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything.
In Charlotte, I mean, it's a Democratic control. It's a Democratic mayor, Democratic governor, Democratic city council, Democratic congresswoman, and we're a pretty progressive city. Like it's good economy, but like we still have protests. We've had a police shooting here. Is it that great?
Exactly.
And you
well, I mean, even in where George Floyd was, I mean, that's Democratic run from top to bottom, basically.
Right.
And so it's kind of just like, look, I mean, I don't think the Democratic Party is the savior to the Republican Party. If anything, to be quite honest with you, I actually think the Democratic Party most of the time is a Republican Party with a small r. They're not as radical, but I have never once heard a Republican nominee for president who was the nominee get criticized for being too far left. Now in the primary, that's different, but the nominee for being too far left, I've never heard that, but I hear it every time for a damn Democrat who's too far right. Bill Clinton's basically a Republican on a lot of the issues he's voted for throughout the years. Jimmy Carter, honestly, you read about him, and when you read about him, it was conservative. Bill Clinton, well, the age of big government's over. We're going to have a small government. Very, very conservative. Like, he compromised to the right. I don't see how many – I hardly ever see Republicans or the Republican president compromise to the left on anything.
But the Democrats have to, because the voting system –
I just think they're bad at playing the game. I don't think they're as good at playing the game. I honestly think they're bad at framing issues and bad at marketing and bad at all that stuff to get the American people behind them. I just don't think they're good at it.
I think they're bad in the sense that they've allowed themselves to kind of become curtailed into a position where they have to be a moderate. But like I said, the reason
Yeah.
is because that's their only, in most cases, not all, but in a general sense, that's their only path to victory is having to come to the middle, where the Republicans have the privilege of being able to go very far right. And like I said, it has to do with gerrymandering and the Electoral College and all these things. So I think it's an easy target to criticize the Democrats for being too moderate and compromising on things. I think it's fair, but it's again, if you want to win, you have to play the game. And I think the real flaw is allowing themselves to be in a position where they constantly have to bend to the right and move to the right to win. And that's what Bernie was trying to, his argument was like, the system isn't working. You know what I mean? And he lost, a victim of the system, but it's like, what are you supposed to do? And you get reps like AOC and these very liberal voices. So obviously you couldn't accuse them of being, conservative or anything like that, but they're in safe Democratic districts, also beneficiaries of gerrymandering. It's like there's these factors that play into it, and that leads to the polarization. But the Democrats are in that position, and it's because of a lot of things.
I don't disagree with what you're saying on almost every level. I just think, to me, the solution to me is you need Bernie Sanders that has the Trump type qualities of being a bulldog for what he wants to get done. I'm not saying the bad qualities of Trump, but Trump is a bulldog. For whatever he wants, he's going to pull everyone that direction, for better or worse, most of the time worse, right? But if you're going to want to rebrand the Democratic Party as being not just a Republican with a small R, or a conservative with a small C, or a slightly left being pulled right all the time type of party, you have to have someone who's aggressively knows how to play the game and aggressive with a more of a left agenda, and is a little bit more cutthroat with it. And honestly, I don't know very many people like that. I mean, we look throughout our history, and FDR is like the only president you can really think of that ever pulled it off. Other than that, most Democratic presidents have been pretty conservative. So it's a very weird dynamic, man.
Are we a conservative country?
I think that might be fair, but I also think it's because if let's say I become more convinced of a left type position throughout the years, bigger government done right is a good thing. Medicare for all done right is a good thing. Higher minimum wage is a good thing. Gun control is a good thing. Just go down the policy list of kind of what your left-wing positions are. Let's say that's where I became. I would be very aggressive in framing and marketing those issues effectively so that the American people can think through it differently than the way it gets thought through now. I feel like the Democratic Party is so bad at framing issues around stuff that the American population feels like they are more conservative on a lot of issues than they actually would be if they were given a more fair unloading of the facts of the issue. Like if it was more fairly unloaded, I think much more of American population would be more left than people realize. But I don't know for sure. That's kind of a gut feeling.
I think it's just tough to kind of put the finger precisely on it, because like we said, okay, say 40% of people vote, that means only 21% of the country picks the winner. But like, that's the other thing, is that people that vote are more engaged. If you're more engaged, you're probably more polarized to the right or the left. And so it's like you get the people that vote are not extremists, but perhaps more so than the average American. So then you get candidates that kind of reflect that, at least, in Donald Trump, right? So all these factors spit out to a system where one party's really bad and one party's mostly bad. I mean, again, I'm taking the Democratic Party over the Republican Party, but that says probably more about the Republicans than the Democrats. And again, I think most people probably disapprove of Trump, but he's still the president because people don't care enough to vote. And if you don't care enough to vote, you're either uninformed or you just don't. You're so comfortable that you don't have to spend the time. You know what I mean?
Or you don't have faith that the system. Or you don't have faith that the system is actually going to do any good, and it's just corrupt from top to bottom. So what is your vote going to do at the end of the day? I mean, people give up hope.
Right, but I think that's born out of, I don't want to say ignorance, but it's like if you do pay attention.
You can't affect change.
We had that candidate, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe twice. One time it was definitely stolen from him, but.
Yeah. I see what you're saying, though. I see what you're saying is if your average voter, who even the ones that have lost hope in the system, if they were actually made more of an effort to be informed, then they would know like when to be engaged with certain candidates much more effectively, and then that candidate could potentially win and cause a change that would almost restore their faith in the system to an extent. So I do kind of I see what you're saying for sure. It's a
But
weird.
yeah,
It's a weird. I don't know.
we can't get to Donald Trump without lack of faith in the system. That's certainly part of
Yeah,
it.
100%, 100%. And I mean, you see, with these protests that are happening right now, a lot of people like the Black Lives Matter. It's like, look, to the Democratic Party, you can't just not like your message can't be we're just not Trump. That can't be all your messages. Like, what are you actually going to do to like cause change? Yeah, you've tried that, didn't work. Not only that, but there were problems before Trump. This is the part that frustrates the hell out of me about the Democratic Party and a lot of people is they act like Trump is the embodiment and cause of all of America's problems. And I'm like, look, there was a lot of problems before Trump got here. The only reason Trump even got to where he got was because of a lot of the problems that are in Washington and are in the country. And whereas I don't believe Trump has done anything to fix most of them, most of those issues, I also understand that it was issues that existed before Trump did anything at all. So it's like at a certain point, you can't, to be the Democratic Party, it can't just be, well, I'm not going to be Donald Trump, and that's it. It's like, well, so you're going to enforce the status quo of what was happening beforehand that we all had problems with as well. And it's just weird, man.
Right, and that's the thing is, I mean, I wonder how many when people say they want to vote for Joe Biden, that means okay, you're against Trump, a return to normalcy. What is normalcy? Where you just have the blinders on and you don't.
Yeah,
you don't
exactly.
have Trump as the president, so
yeah,
certainly that's an upgrade, right? But
yeah.
who is that an upgrade for? Like,
yeah, exactly.
To me, because white male corporate job. Again, it's not affecting me. I have a voice on it, but I'm not living
exactly.
it.
No, I totally agree.
So like,
I totally agree.
So if I'm just voting, okay, Joe Biden, like better character than Trump, he's not gonna try to fight with a social media company, like less of an embarrassment, certainly. But should that be what we're qualifying this on?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just crazy. I think that's something I'm trying to learn more and more about is the kind of and it's been really cool studying the incumbencies of all these presidents is you start to realize honestly the same pieces have applied throughout the last 100 years within American politics about the the moderate, the progressive, the big government, small government. There's certain common denominators that have just always been there throughout our history, and it's like I'm starting. I always like when I start to find patterns and themes that are reoccurring in politics, because then I can start to go, well, where do I fit on those reoccurring themes and patterns? And that's what I like about doing this podcast, is because it forces me to engage with ideas on a regular basis to where it's like, what do I actually believe, or what do I actually need to learn, or what am I actually ignorant about that I didn't even realize beforehand, So it's all fascinating. It's all very, very interesting.
So the takeaway is we're screwed.
Yeah, that's the takeaway. That's a good summary, actually. So real quick, though, and I think this would be a good thing to end on. So this week we'll do the episode with two police officer friends and talk about the George Floyd issue. I think that's an issue that deserves an episode in and of itself, and not just a 5 or 10 minute segment. So hopefully that conversation will be interesting to people. We'll try to keep it somewhat educational, where you are getting perspectives from officers on their job, so it gives you more well-rounded experience. And I'm probably going to push back in ways that will be interesting for viewers to kind of hear, hopefully, because I do have kind of developing beliefs about the whole thing. But in reality, I don't know how you feel about your own opinion on the matter, but I don't feel like I have a good enough grasp of all the racial issues and police brutality issues to have like a convincing position on any of the aspects. But at a certain point, when you keep seeing these issues happen over and over again, you feel like you do need to stand up and speak out. I just don't know how effective my opinion is in doing that. So it'll be interesting to kind of have the conversation.
I have an opinion.
There we go.
Don't worry.
Good. Good. I'm glad. All right, man. Well, any last words to say before we wrap it up? That episode will be Wednesday, by the way, for people that want to listen. Wednesday or Thursday this week. We should be able to drop that.
Yeah, probably record Wednesday, drop Thursday. So I think, that's worth its own 30 to 60 minutes of content. Yeah, I think we've discuss the inadequacy of the system, but we'll keep on going.
Cool. Yeah, no, my thing is, like, honestly, everyone's a pessimist. Everyone likes to bitch and complain about how bad things are to an extent. But it's easy. At the end of the day, it's hard to know what the right option is. It's hard to govern right. It is hard. And unless good people stand up and do stuff to change the system, like there's a certain breaking point I have for people that like to bitch and complain about a broken system that don't do anything to change it. I'm like, look, then you just don't get to comment anymore. You don't just get to sit back with your popcorn and criticize everything all the time. You have to actually have some ways you're trying to change it for the better, or you don't, or your opinion carries less weight in my mind. So I don't want to be people who just bitch all the time about it. I actually want to do stuff to fix the broken system as much as we can, and that's what I'm more interested in talking about at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like I said, it's we're in a position where we can commentate without it directly affecting us. And
Yep.
you have to, I think when you're in that position, you got to, number one, recognize it, and number two, try to use it for as much good as you can.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's good, man. That's a very positive note to end on. I got to get bouncing. We will talk next week about regular podcasts, scheduled podcast stuff, but this Wednesday or Thursday we'll be releasing that special episode about the George Floyd murdering, which is an atrocity for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Positive vibes.
All right, man.
Only.
Positive vibes.
Yeah.
All right, see ya.